What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for joining me on the next episode of In the Pink. And if you are not familiar with what that term means, that is a term coined way back in the 1500s, before pink was even a color. And it had to do with wishing someone their optimum health and happiness. So this week we're gonna cover gut health, and we are filling in that blank with addictions. But first, we always start out with the what we know. So my first what we know, most drug overdose deaths in the United States involve an opioid. In fact, nearly 75% in 2020. Which makes sense because we keep hearing this catchphrase, opioid epidemic. It is a real thing. And the costs to the system on this, the social costs, are in the billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions to be exact. And the next what we know. Now we do know to date, most of the research done in this area of addiction has to do with researching the brain, which makes logical sense, right? Because we already know that substances that are misused or abused cause both physiological damage and functional changes in the brain. Specifically those areas that are involved in the reward system and motivation. It's only been recently that this shift has taken place where they're starting to research the gut microbiome and its role in addiction. And my third what we know. This one is a quote from an unknown author, but oh boy, is it relevant. Addiction is the only prison where the locks are on the inside. Think on that one for a while. All right, time to move on. Let's move on to addiction defined, just so we were all on the same page of what we are talking about here. So addiction defined is a mental affliction favoring short-term rewards, even in the face of long-term harm. Now with addiction, we usually think of this as being hardcore drugs, right? We think of methamphetamines, cocaine, but we also know that very accessible items in our culture, being alcohol, cigarettes, even sugary foods, because what these addictive substances do is basically pump up the serotonin and dopamine in our systems. And this gives us this mood shift, this happy feeling, right? We get basically a pleasurable high. And our brain then interprets that as the means to this high, no matter what that is. Now here's where we're gonna start connecting some dots, okay? It's where it gets interesting, so buckle up. Let's go back and define dysbiosis quickly. It's an imbalance in our gut microbiome where we are starting to have a shift of harmful bacteria overgrowing and replacing good bacteria, okay? Dysbiosis. Now, if you ask somebody what happens when their gut is out of balance, you're probably gonna get a pretty general answer, right? Tummy upset, you're gonna have some stomach aches, maybe some nauseous. However, that is not the only thing that happens when we have dysbiosis. It throws off our hormone balance, cortisol, stress levels specifically. It gives increased behaviors associated with anxiety. It's gonna give you a mood shift into the depressive realm. And since we already know that anxiety and depression are symptoms of addiction, it's not a stretch to consider that the gut microbiome has something to do with this. So this is where researchers started. They wanted to see if this thread of dysbiosis was present in people that struggle with addictions. So let's move on. Let's move on to the gut's role in all this. Well, because this connection is indirect, researchers still started there. So they started with alcohol abuse, found that 31% of people with alcohol addiction have gut dysbiosis. They also had an increased gut permeability, which we talk about all the time. It's this leaky gut. And they also had increased levels of some chemicals produced in our gut that are tied to depression. Then they moved on to cocaine addiction. They found a decreased level of the spermacutes. They also found an increased level of bacteroidetes. Now these probably mean nothing, but it was a differential from people that don't have these substance abuse issues. And that was validated when they moved on to just generalized substance abuse problems. And they found that people with general substance abuse had a differential in their bacteria makeup. They found 3 specific strains that they had a greater diversity in. So what these researchers can now conclude is that yes, there is dysbiosis present in folks that struggle with addiction issues. All right, let's move on to the next thing. Let's look at how this microbiome can definitely drive addiction. Well, a healthy gut microbiome requires diversity. Many strains of good gut bacteria working together to keep our bodies healthy, right? But when we have substance abuse issues, no matter what that substance is, there is gut dysbiosis. There's going to be a shift, there's going to be an imbalance, and the diversity is going to decrease. But as these beneficial microbes, things like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, as they are dying off and not populating our gut like they should, that leaves room for pathogens to get in there and populate and thrive. And of course, these good strains that are being moved out are the ones that are specifically responsible for producing dopamine and serotonin, these neurotransmitters that we want to keep us healthy. But not only that, these opportunistic pathogens that get in there and do populate and thrive don't produce this butyrate that the other healthy bacteria do, and that is also a player in nourishing and healing our gut lining, and that ties into that leaky gut business. All right, let's move on to the next point here. When we get these pathogens overgrowing, they are pro-inflammatory. And of course, when that's accompanied by a reduction in these short-chain fatty acids that are produced by the good gut bacteria, then we also get inflammation going around in the gut lining itself, which is also harmful. And this intestinal inflammation also leaks into immune inflammation. It all is related. Okay, let's move on to a quick study here. There was a study done in rats, specifically with fentanyl self-administration. And what the researchers did, they wiped out the rat's gut microbiome, putting them on antibiotics. And we know that antibiotics are going to disrupt our gut bacteria as a whole. And what that shift meant in these rats is they started self-administering this fentanyl at a more rapid rate. But not only that, they administered short-term fatty acids to these rats, and they found there was a shift. They weren't self-administering as much any longer. So the theories that they had in place proved to be true. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to some healthy practices, some things we can be doing on a daily basis, not only when it comes to addiction, even if it's just sugar, but to keep us in a healthy place for a healthy life. Well, the first thing, we always start with diet. It is the easiest place to make a shift, to make some changes that are going to be effective. So eating from around the aisles in your grocery store, and we know what that means, right? It means eating a wide variety of fresh fruits and vegetables, which are high in fibers, and fibers are prebiotics. They feed our good probiotics that we have planted in our gut. And of course, fermented foods. We know the importance of fermented foods for a healthy gut. Okay, the next thing, probiotics. There are even probiotics out there that are considered psychobiotics because they're so powerful to our mental health, which also is rooted in our gut. So Bifidobacterium longum and Lactobacillus rhamnosus are 2 that have specifically been shown to help elevate mood. And they've even done studies in mice about this and how that is related to addictions. And that rolls us right into the best part. Let's talk plexus. Let's talk plexus and how plexus and supplementation can definitely play a role in your health picture. Well, the first thing we always start with is the TRIPLEX. It is 3 products. It is the pink drink called Slim, which is specific for tackling the 3 pillars of our health, which are blood sugar stability, overall cellular inflammation, and gut health. The microbiome activating Slim has a prebiotic fiber in there to feed the probiotics that we are planting with the PROBIO 5. And this PROBIO 5 is not any regular probiotic. This thing is a powerhouse because it is packed with an enzyme blend that gets in there to break up the yuck, moving a candida overgrowth and other bad pathogenic bacteria out. And the last thing, the BioCleanse, because we might need help getting that yuck out, right? This BioCleanse is a superior magnesium supplement, oxygenated with vitamin C, with sodium bicarbonate, giving us a gentle daily cleanse as well as a fantastic magnesium supplement. And the next one I want to cover, VITALBIOME. This is another probiotic, a straight probiotic with 8 different strains of probiotics other than the 5 that are in the PROBIO 5. And these strains, some are considered psychobiotics. They are going to help specifically with our mood. So when it comes to things like anxiety or depression type symptoms, it only makes sense. All right, you guys, thanks for hanging with me till the very end. And if you are new to this Plexus train and have no idea what I am talking about, I'm gonna list in that description box my link. Get on there, nose around, ask me some questions. Curiosity will get you on this train every time. I'm also gonna list in that description box some videos I've done in the past covering the products I've talked about and some other episodes of In the Pink. And the whole In the Pink playlist is gonna be right up here, so if you wanna catch a couple more episodes, they'll be easy to sort. And you just might wanna join me here again next week, because what happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. It affects everything, which is going to lead into many more episodes of In the Pink.